All right, today we're tackling a topic that is, well, it's a true moral minefield, and it sits right at the heart of modern society: hate speech. It's a deeply personal and complicated issue, and what we're going to do here is break down exactly why really good, reasonable people can land on completely different sides of this debate.
So let's just get right to it. The core question is this. Morally, should the whole principle of free speech actually extend to protecting hate speech? It's one of those questions where people of good faith passionately, and I mean passionately, disagree, and for some very compelling reasons.
You know, what makes this so incredibly difficult is that there's just no simple answer. It's a genuine clash between two powerful values that, honestly, most of us hold pretty dear. You've got the fundamental right to free expression on one side, and then on the other, the equally important duty to protect people from harm.
Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to start by exploring the moral arguments for protecting all speech, even the kind of speech that we might find deeply, deeply offensive, or even repugnant.
So this perspective, it really stands on three main pillars. First, the absolute essential freedom of thought. Second, this idea that exposing bad ideas is actually the best way to defeat them. And third, a really core concept called the equal liberty principle. Let's break each one of these down. The first argument is all about the danger of censorship. From this viewpoint, the real moral risk isn't so much the offensive idea itself. No, it's about giving some powerful authority, like a government, the power to decide which ideas are, quote, acceptable. The thinking here is that the potential for that power to be abused is a way bigger threat than just allowing hateful speech to exist out in the open.
Okay, next up is what folks often call the sunlight argument. The idea here is pretty simple. If you try to suppress hateful ideologies, you don't actually get rid of them. You just push them underground, right? Into these dark corners of the internet where they can grow and fester without anyone challenging them. So bringing them into the light, as uncomfortable as that is, allows society to actually see them, confront them, and openly reject.
Now this right here, it perfectly captures the essence of that third pillar, the equal liberty principle. The logic is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. If free speech is a genuine moral right, well then it has to apply to everyone equally. And yeah, that means even to people whose views we absolutely despise. Because protecting only the speech we agree with, the good speech, isn't really protecting free speech at all, is it? All right, that's a pretty powerful case for protection, you have to admit. But now let's flip it. Let's look at the other side of the scale and explore the equally compelling moral case for restricting hate speech. And just like the first perspective, this case is also built on three core arguments: the very real harm that hate speech causes, its unequal impact across society, and this idea that it creates a kind of slippery slope that leads toward violence. So this argument, it pushes back hard against the whole sticks and stones idea that speech is just words. It says that hate speech inflicts real, tangible harm. It can dehumanize entire groups of people, it creates a climate of fear, and it can cause serious psychological damage. So from this moral standpoint, society has a fundamental duty to protect its members from this kind of harm. And this is absolutely crucial. The burden of hate speech isn't shared equally by everyone, not even close. It overwhelmingly targets communities that are already marginalized. So think about it. While one person is exercising their freedom, another person might feel so unsafe they can't even participate in public life. In this way, allowing hate speech can actually have the opposite effect. It can end up silencing the very voices that most need to be heard. And this illustrates that slippery slope argument perfectly. The point here isn't that hate speech is violence. The point is that it can pave the way for it. See, first, it normalizes hostility toward a group. Then, that normalization can encourage actual acts of discrimination. And over time, this whole climate just makes acts of physical violence more likely. So the moral responsibility from this perspective is to step in before we ever get to that final step. So we've just looked at two very strong but opposing moral frameworks. And this, of course, leads to the big question: is there a middle ground? Is there some way to reconcile these competing values?
You know, a lot of people do land on a balanced position that looks something like this. The idea is that free speech should be robustly and broadly protected, just as a general rule. However, a line gets drawn. And that line is where speech directly incites violence, becomes targeted harassment, or engages in systematic dehumanization. The key here is that the goal isn't to protect people from being offended, but to prevent serious, tangible harm.
This table really helps to visualize where that line could be drawn. On one side, you have things like direct incitement to violence and targeted harassment, actions that clearly cross over into causing demonstrable harm. But on the other side, you've got ideas that might be offensive or unpopular or that challenge our beliefs, and those would remain protected. It's a real attempt to find a clear, principled distinction.
So what's really crucial to understand is that this is not a settled issue. There is no single easy answer here. It is and remains a genuine moral trade-off, a dilemma that societies all over the world are grappling with every single day. Ultimately, where you land on this issue often comes down to which of these fundamental values you prioritize. If your moral compass points mainly toward liberty and this deep belief in open inquiry, well, you're probably going to lean towards protecting even hate speech. But if you prioritize preventing harm and protecting the fundamental dignity of every single person, you're likely going to support restricting it. And neither of those positions is without a very strong moral foundation.
And that leaves us with the question that is right at the very heart of this trade-off, a question with no simple answer. Where exactly do we draw that line? When does one person's liberty to speak threaten another's fundamental right to safety and dignity? That's the dilemma we all have to think about.